Wonderful. My name is Oleg and I'm responsible for marketing in St. Birds, and together with me I have Sasha, who is on the stage right now, and he's responsible for user acquisition in the department, analytical department. Well, for those of you who doesn't know what is St. Bird, because it's not a Russian company, it's not available in Russia, it's a subscription for beauty products and colognes. We have big assortment of well-known perfume and beauty brands, and people can choose something. You order it and get for $15 monthly stock. We have more than 100 active subscribers in the US. 4 years we have sent more than 10 million boxes, and our monthly budget fluctuates between and $3 million. One of the most popular types of conversations with the colleagues both in Russia or in the US, how they build the attribution. And this conversation very often is done in the context of luxury and attribution and waiting in the middle and average. Some other people operate with well, we think that while we talk in such a context and we speak about web and not about applications, this conversation has no sense and there is no answer. Why? When you look at the sequence, that is, all these sequences, many of these sequences, they are cross-device or cross-browser broken, and user zeros its chain. And the second problem is that many channels, by their nature, are looking like organic, and these are offline channels, TV, radio, outdoor, or even some digital channels like influencer marketing or even YouTube advertising. And for this, when you look at the G, you think that it's organic, but this is not. Of course, one of potential solutions that looks attractive is not to look at the chain links, but look at the final visit, but increase the number of signals and go from pure UTM to using coupon codes, using information about from which landing user has arrived, and answers on a post-purchase survey. And post-purchase survey is a survey after a technical page where you've been asked where you have learned about this service, in our case Sandbird. And users can have a set of these signals and they can be interpreted. Well, there is a problem related with the fact that this set can be contradictory. For example, user number 2 doesn't have UTM, doesn't have any landing page. He came from the main page. He has a coupon code and a cost purchase server. He says that he came from YouTube. And this simple case is an ideal scenario. So you understand that this user came from a certain YouTuber to whom you have paid, and then you can attribute it to him. However, scenario 1 and 3 are more complicated. Scenario 1 can be interpreted somehow. Most likely it is a user who came from the Facebook. Along the way, he's been searching for coupons on St. Birds, have found resites coupon, and these coupon sites there are as a market and from Intensors coupon, but because couponers they use affiliate links, it came from affiliate. And it requires a human expertise to look at it. User 3, it's difficult to understand why he has such a set, and it's very hard to interpret it. But in theory, we can take a set of all other signals, weight them, evaluate them, and we can take mark chain technology, check it. And instead of them, you can put all these signals out there and see how removing this or another participant of this chain influences the attribution. However, when you do this, very often what you get, it's not a really understandable result, and it's a very complicated exercise. So yes, you can do that, and it's not a fact that you will get something interesting out of it. Well, so we have a common problem here, that if traditional last click or the first click is not a solution. If the increasing of the number of signals in the theory can be a solution, but very often it's not a solution, then how can we think about that? How can we make decisions? How many sales come from which channel? And we have been thinking about it and making experiments. We thought that there's no single system of attribution universal for everything, and that for every channel, for every group of channels, we need to select a solution which can be applicable in the best way for this. And from this point of view, I took 4 examples. They do not reflect the whole integrity of the channel, but they reflect a big number of them. And you will understand the logic. And the most common thing, the most common topic is social service platforms, whether it's going to be those traffic sources with the rooms where everything is tuned up, like Facebook with the Instagram, My Target in Russia, AdWords, where you might have display advertising, or YouTube. And the main problem is that you cannot simply look at sales that you have in your room and saying that how much sales was brought to me by this particular channel, because there is an incrementality problem, and this is a problem. Well, this problem for a long period of time was not paid attention to by other people, but in the last 2 years it's a big topic, and everybody. For those of you who knows nothing about this problem, briefly, you have thousands of sales in the room, and the main question is how many of them would happen even if there wouldn't be display of the advertising or clicks in the advertising. And it's always a certain percentage of these sales would happen anyway. If you don't have a zero story like a brand, you have organics, people are telling to each other about you, and then they come and buy. But because we all are located sometime in the internet, between how you made the decision and then go and buy, they gave you some advertising show, and it's not the reason of the purchase, but in this process. Well, formally he participated in this process and produced it. So what is the solution for this particular problem? First of all, channel participation. There are incremental tests as a part of functionality, like Facebook with Instagram, same criteria with big retargeting platform, and retargeting is happy that it's very incremental, and its incrementality can be from 20 to 50%, and these tests can be conducted. However, if in a given platform these tests are not available and you don't try them, maybe they're not available in your volumes, there is a manual way to make this incremental test, and you do it in the following way. You have certain campaigns which are very active, you have best creativeness, some targets, and it's leading to the creative landing page. Campaigns are, well, you launch the campaign for the same audience, with the same structure, with same bid. Then you load the creativeness, which has nothing in common with your brand, and then it's landed to the page, which also is not related to your brand. Well, it depends from where you do it, in Google or Facebook. In Google, due to the fact how the tracking attribution is built there, you should use your own domain. You should apply page from which you cannot hit to the main page, and which cannot track the purchase. In case with Facebook or Instagram, you can move to any page of somebody else's domain, even AliExpress, doesn't matter. And this advertising, this creativeness, will attribute to itself a certain amount of sales, just because some people who bought it from you, it's not relevant advertising for them in this chain, and the sales will be attributed. So there will be a certain conversion rate to this advertising. Let's say this is 0.5%, and your target advertising, this is 2%. And this difference between 0.5% and 2% is a conversion lift. It's incrementality. For example, you know that incrementality is 20% for you, and you have checked it in such a way, this 20%, or in the best case, 80. 20 is a very sad story. 20% of sales incremental, and you take the total volume of sales, which is shown, and you apply this incrementality ratio. Then you divide this incremental sales for the whole spend, and this is your truthful CPA per channel. That's how you make a decision. It's important to remember that when the scale is changed, or when your budget is changed, incrementality is changing. And if you've spent $100,000 a month, and then you started spending $200,000 or $300,000, these tests should be conducted for the next time, because incrementality will change, and you have to pay attention that the main and initial objective is to check incrementality of retargeting, because in general, very often it's not incremental. And the second group of channels, influencer marketing and podcasts. Yes, of course, they have a traditional tracking, they use coupon codes and bit.ly links with UTM description box for video, or special landing. And the problem is that these channels, these ways of attributions, they are under attributing a certain amount of sales which are flowing into organics, and there are no coupons, they have no lending, they don't have UTMs. And when we've been researching this topic, we have understood that in our case, approximately 30% are under it attributed. And a good way of repetitive check is post-purchase survey. How does it work with podcast, with influencer advertising analogy? When the advertising is sent for the podcast, a post-purchase survey adds a podcast variant, and for a certain amount of people, they reply to this option irrespectively to the fact that you don't do this advertising. In our case, 0.75% said that they came from podcasts, irrespectively to the fact that we don't do them. And at a certain moment of time, you launch podcast advertising, and you see uplift to this 0.75, and it becomes 3%. So you have 2.3% of the percentage points. It's an uplift, and you take 2.3% from sales, and these are your sales from podcast. This is a good additional test tool. Speaking about brand search or AdWords, this is a well-known problem when you launch brand search. Its incrementality is a big problem, because everybody discusses whether I need to start advertising for the brand, or it's not obvious how many people would come to us. And we generally have a well-known approach is a chessboard spreadsheet. You can calculate a lot of things in chessboard spreadsheet. I'm not going to describe it to you how it is, but it's a well-known approach. You shouldn't launch brand search and then attribute all these sales to, to like real sales. TV. In a case, if you spend 10% of your budget for it, well, it can be measured by two ways. The first one is spike analysis, and the second one post-purchase survey. If with the post-purchase survey everything's clear, it's the same story like with podcasts, but spike analysis is a good methodology. In Russia, it's not that popular. The exception is that you take baseline organics, and immediately after you have your advertising trailer in 5-minute window after the broadcasting, you measure organic spike.
There is a video, there is a spike, and all this spike is attributed to TV. We super juxtapose it over the organic, and we forecast the amount of sales from the TV, and then again you double check it. I have to say that despite the fact that many are quite skeptical about this, and they say that people do not remember where they came from, the practice, the real life, and not only our practice but the practice of our colleagues in the US tells us that this is a very good tool, given that you you have measured the full awareness. That means that you are adding the options of the answers before launching, and you are considering what will be the share or proportion of people who will name this channel. If you have it counted in, then this tool is quite precise, but it's working only with those channels which people can reflect on. To give you an idea, that there are a lot of channels which are difficult to add. For example, emails, to add anywhere, because emails, very often it's simple retargeting. A person came not because of the email, but because of the Facebook, but then email caught up with them and will point to the Facebook instead of email. And with the search, sometimes the same problem. Usually it works with the channels where people can easily, like, they're easily to reflect on, easily to ask questions about these channels. Now, we've gone through this path, and what was our perspective, and just what kind of result it will give us. In the very beginning of our way, we've simply taken some sales from our personal cabinets, from the coupons, so we would add all this up, and eventually it looks like it gives us over 100%. If we combine all the sales from all the sources, you will have sales worth of like 30, sometimes 40% more than you actually have them in reality. And when you do this kind of debugging of each of the channels, gradually you're beginning to see the decrease of this overlap. And in ideal, it comes to 0%. In the sum, you have the amount close to 100%. And this is what we are seeing due to using the methodology. And we now have come closer to having this, like, a number of channels is not very big. Overlap of channels is not very big. Although we've had a situation when we launched the advertisement in the YouTube, we begin to spend quite a lot of money on the YouTube. We've seen some reasonable CPA. And we were confused because we thought that it looks like too optimistic, and we have spent like 3 or 4 different incremental tasks designed in different ways, also including the regions, when half of the regions would be connected and half of them would be left behind. And we've seen that the prospecting is only 50%, and that's why we decided to reconfigure our rates, our understanding of what CPA will be, and give up this channel, or to shrink this channel. And basically, right after that, we have a question. Okay, if we have this kind of not super complex answer to the question of how to attribute sales and how to calculate K, it solves, it does the job. Then why do we need all of these CRMs and very complex things? Wouldn't it be better to simply to use this like a simple Excel exercise, and then to finish up this conversation? But the problem is that attribution is quite a generic word, and only a small part of it is about to find out really, all in all, how many sales had been attributed or came from each of the channels. And by the way, this is not a user-centric case. You simply know that, okay, from the Facebook, Facebook is saying that it's 1,000, you think it's 800 people. You do not know information in your database where they came from, but you simply know that Facebook is like 800. And this part enables you to manage your budget, but does not allow you to do many other things. And speaking about the other parts of the attribution, for which you need a more complex CRM system and more complex mathematical models. Now this part will be continued by Alexander, by Sasha. Now a little bit of magic. Okay, what's next? What's next? Like I said before, for us, attribution is an instrument. Let's say that we have solved this one first challenge, and that we've decided who is coming from where. We identify the traffic sources. What can be done next? Next, we can calculate, and we can somehow to begin to manage our unit economy. The next stage will be, okay, we've done all the math for the unit economics. What do we do next? Let's model it. What will be happening if we change, when we change some configurations, or what could be happening in the future? How can we forecast it, and so on and so on? And to be able to share all of that, I'm going to give just one digression to give you a little bit of how the Sandbird is working, because at the first glance you may think that the Sandbird is a very simple thing. But and this would be great, when if had we have just simple users who would come through the ads in the Google or in organics or maybe via Facebook, they would go to our great products, one subscription a month, and so it's okay. But then it would simply like take all these billions of investors' money and would pour them into the Facebook to improve and to increase our volumes. But as a matter of fact, it does not work that simply, like never. Because in addition to these channels, we have over dozens of others. We're constantly experimenting with the new ones. We are changing their proportions. And speaking about the Sandbird, we have two more projects. And well, earlier you could only do one subscriptions a month, and now we can do subscribe to one, two, three. You can do like one-off product purchase. We have a totally different products. Now we have like skincare products, cosmetic products. So now we have to tense up and to collect the data. How data work in the Sandbird? Now it could be interesting because it looks like we're using not a very popular solution. Speaking of Russia, I mean, because our main storage should be the Redshift, where we're pulling data from our ad cabinets and data. We also use the Snowplow. Snowplow is like a shoot off different events, and Looker is a main MBI. We also have Mixpanel. Not so long ago, we've launched another application. We're using Adjust, and of course, Google Analytics. And at the same time, we haven't learned yet to make everything in Looker. Let's call it the integration between the Looker and Google Sheets. And in the Google Sheets, we can also like do something manually. Again, one of the problems of why we have sometimes to do things like to to do something manual, because we have to like spend about online stories and spend when we work with expenditures, we work with influencers. So far, we weren't able to find just one very convenient instrument to do all of these. So much about the data. Now I will speak about the tasks or challenges that we are working on. One of the main challenges is CAC LTV model. Initially, can you answer the question, what is your general ROI? Let's take, probably we all remember some approximate margin number of our business, and we say, okay, we have a couple of channels, we have so much traffic, we have so many sales, we coupled it by the margin and got the ROI. So when you do this very carefully, oftentimes the mistake may have an accumulation effect. You can get a totally different effect, like a totally different one. And then we begin to answer. We go down one level down, and basically we begin to chunk our product into the cases like, okay, let's calculate how the LTV model by channels, LTV by coupons, by the subscription plans, and then let's take and think, okay, how can we select such a mix of channels? How can we redistribute our budgets, our sufferings and our efforts into what channels to make sure that this mix would be optimal, so that it serves some of our purposes and so that we would meet our KPI and pursue our goals. And again, this could be represented like that. I believe that this is a very simple visualization. Okay, here you have the sales, and here you have a marketing budget and the sales. And you can imagine that this is sort of like a triangle. And in this triangle, you're pulling to one of the sides and things are changing. So this is about somehow to be able to understand where you have to pull it and where you want to come. There are a lot of complexity in this thing. One of the main complexity is calculating your LTV. We are a subscription service, and we have one charge a month. Actually, it's a pain. It's a source of pain in the sense that not always we are making money from the very first charge. So we have to do all of that to be able to calculate what would be our economics and will we have any conversions in the future. If you want to calculate LTV for 12 months, yeah, you have to wait for 1 year to do that. And as soon as we begin to decrease the number of these points, I mean, we're trying to calculate some LTV by the smaller number of points. we have the huge increase of the margin of error in our calculations, and you always want to calculate LTV in a totally different layers. Okay, let's take the audience from this channel, apply to them this kind of discount coupon, or take something else, and we begin to calculate it and within these like slots. Unfortunately, we do not have enough data yet for these kind of calculation combinations. Sometimes you have to maximize something, approximate, and do like in comparison wise, and hopefully it will be good for the operational management. Lest we build some model for 6 months and then look what happened, put it under the table and forget about this. We want every day to be able to look into that and to be able to get some knowledge out of it and to apply it somehow. Again, one important thing is let's take the contribution of other teams. It's always great to say that, okay, our ROI we went through the roof because we brought such a cool traffic and it was so cheap to attract. But our colleagues have also been working, so we have to pay them respect and to say that yes, they've made some contribution. And again, if we're saying that this should be on one hand a very global model, whenever you move into this kind of operational management from this like a small cell, you need to get this kind of full picture out of these like pieces of the puzzle. So you need to decompose a very complex plan, like a year-long plan, into smaller chunks. Now, what is our solution? It's quite simple. Let's assume we have a year-long plan. We can take this year-long plan and break it down by months. Why? Because we have sort of a rough idea what will be a seasonality factor, and we can identify what will be happening in each of the months. How much money do we have to pump into each month, and how much users we will get in return. And then moving from the year down to 1 month and one level down, it's a weekly monitoring. And actually, so far, we decided that this will be our particle just 1 week. One element will be 1 week, and the results, week-based data, enable us to do some kind of operational management decisions. Okay, we see all the data, we go back up, meaning that we have added up results throughout all the weeks, and we have 1 month. And next, out of this month, we can do the forecast of if we'll retain the same pace of movement, what will be happening, let's say, a year later with these cohorts, including the contribution of other teams. Hopefully it will be good, and this is what our table looks like. It's a weekly table. On the left, I just copy-pasted part of our channels into here. On the top, you can see the simplest metrics like spend, sales, CPA, ROI, the accumulation effect, and the same metrics, but only running total and some kind of ranking. Next, super important task. And now, since every month we are buying a cohort of users, and we get like this cohort of users, and eventually we get some database. Fine. What will be happening with this database after a while? How many users of this database will survive, let's say, until a certain point in time? Could it be so that actually we are slowly dying? How can we, paint this money graph of how we're making more and more money? And the next super interesting moment, what if we take this previous model and we'll be able to find some traffic source which basically will have the right economics, it will be profitable to us, but they'll have a high churn. What do I mean by high churn? For example, twice as many as an average. What will happen if we'll begin to buy this channel at our next horizon? Time span will be buying a lot in a big proportion. What will happen to our database? Could it be that eventually all the churn, and out of this churn, because this channel will be a big part, all the database will become to die off, or will we plateau and maybe we'll even begin to grow in this scenario? And now very briefly, about different goals is first studying organics, and I believe that everybody's doing fine. When you have in organics, and I don't know, every month or a quarter, you're approaching it and you begin to all anew. Okay, how can I take these organics and to identify some unaccounted for channels? And I believe that this is what everybody is doing this once in a while. Next, it will be analysis of the channels overlapping. How do they impact one another? Maybe there's a cannibalization of channels, like how can we have an outflow of coupons from one channel into the other channel. Next one is data checking. Data checking from the partners. I think it's a very common task. I even have like a certain mental picture that the right American startups, when they wake up, they think, oh, it's a cool morning. Wow, I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee, meditate, and do the biohacking. But sometimes we wake up and think, who, where, and when cheated on us and deceived us. And unfortunately, we can be right in this kind of thinking. Next, measurements of the unaccounted for effects of the influencers. Oleg has been speaking about that. I guess it's a separate topic of discussion speaking about influencers, because influencers could be not that huge as the contribution from different channels. From YouTube, you can have a long tail and many things like that. And it's also happening that you as a user are coming to YouTube and you're watching the video of your favorite blogger. He's speaking about some product and you're saying, okay. And on the next day, you simply remember there was like a very cool product and you sort of liked it, but you're too lazy to look for a promo, to look for the link, to follow the link, and to go buy it. And you simply look for the same stuff in the Google, the name of this product, and you buy it. So seemingly, this blogger came to you to this product, and you have to be accounted for. But how to do that? The next case is about the Facebook, because we have to work with Facebook. If you do not work on an American market with Facebook, probably you're not working at all. You're not on the market per se. And so we are endlessly studying the incremental factor by different budget levels, and we're digging into attribution and so on and so forth. There was a very briefly about the challenges, and we've also noticed that all the good guys are giving the promo codes, and here it is, our promo code, but but the service is available only on the US territory, so you can send it to your friends, and we also there's a chance to win 1,000 American dollars. It's a QR code, and probably you have a smartphone, and you can scan this barcode right now. And thanks everyone. Or you can come up and say we do all things wrong, and how can we improve things? How can we speed up things by the factor of many? It'll be a great. Oh, thank you very much. We do have time. Here we have a hand. Microphone, please. Second. Yeah, if you don't mind, a couple of questions from our viewers. Sasha, thanks a lot for the presentation. We also have direct consumer business. We do the same things, the same challenges we are facing that you've touched on your presentation, but you begin with the problem of the cross-devicing, and you finished up on the problem of unaccounted for search, and probably you also have some cases when you have a huge not defined or non-defined, because one of the biggest challenges we're facing is that we spend a lot of money on Facebook. We do not have any direct click, but probably the attribution is not defined in the search, and it's happening through the cross device. How do you do you have any solutions? I guess Oleg could give you a much better overview about the Facebook than I would, but as a matter of fact, like I said before, first of all, we are experimenting with the Facebook of how can we just separate the audiences. And basically, the center is mostly for the mobile. Overwhelming majority of our traffic is from the mobile, and the problem of the cross device is not that huge, at least seemingly. So you do not have any conversion with the desktop, like the huge ones. Yeah, exactly. They're like way less, way less. That's why to us, probably the cross device, if you're using several mobile devices, yes. But this desktop and mobile, no. What is your not defined in your traffic? I cannot answer right now. Sorry. Sasha, thank you for your presentation. You've touched upon many issues, but you didn't quite close off how you didn't quite explain how you solve them. You've mentioned about one interesting thing, like a churn outflow in subscription services, one of the main indicators, because all the unit economic actually depends on the churn rate. And when you had been speaking that you are you are comparing the traffic sources, like in one of them there could be a bigger churn than the average. Are you sure that this is about traffic, or maybe this could be like a season factor in this traffic, or products which had been bought in this traffic? And why? Because in my business, we have a B2B service, so we have a similar thing. We're trying to understand the differences and the reasons of this churn factor. How do you analyze and how do you look at it? Thank you, a very cool question. Whenever I'm speaking about some channels which have a high churn, or the churn is much higher than anywhere else, mostly these are some kind of partner programs, like a partnering programs. This would be like net, no net. And for them, we try to do a special offer. We're attempting to build with them, like we're paying them a fix for sales, and a fixed amount for sales, and this kind of tightening of the bolts on our side, this could prompt them to pump a better traffic. And since we do some kind of landing pages and some promos for them, usually in terms of the product, there's another big choice, or a certain category of products which we know very well. And from the standpoint of a product, we do not have so-called product effect here. The next item, let's say that we have a different promo codes. Some can give you 25% or a free trial, or some 50%. And again, we are experimenting here because we have done a lot of experiments. We understand what code will really be dropping depending on the channel, which you want. Now, the seasonal factor. We know that the seasonal factor works in general, and for example, it's quite specific, but at the same time, we do not have like a super expressed effect. Yes, we have the seasonal factor as a factor, but it's not like super expressed. It's not like near the New Year holidays we make so many sales, and in the summertime nothing. No, this kind of seasonal fluctuation can tell us like overall about the products, how we're going to feel month by month. Yes, about the channels, it's a good question, but unfortunately, even to study this, since we have so many points for the LTV, and this would be very expensive. So yes, sometimes you have to do it by proxy methodology or somewhere else. Hopefully, I've answered your question. Thank you. Any other questions, please? Yes, please. Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, it looks like we do not... Oh, it looks like we have somebody else. Yes, please. And here's my question. Impact of the influencers. You've mentioned on this topic, and you said that you are evaluating this situation. How do you evaluate it? And maybe you do have any automated system of how you would evaluate impact of the influencers or share of the influencers via organics. Okay. And we just generally do all the stats about all the placements, like what, where, and when. And through the YouTube IP, we check what kind of video has been released and how many, I don't know, commands has been there, and many other things. And then, once in a while, we do some tests. We run some tests, but mechanics is like, it's not like a 5-second. We simply would do some testing, by which we have some idea that a certain percentage of these influencers actually is dropping into organics. But this kind of experiment is easy to do if influencers is a very big part of what you do, or you have a lot of influencers, and there are some like very express points, and when all these videos are coming out in just one day, for example. And it looks like, okay, here we have it with this kind of setting. But speaking more specifically, it will take a long time to explain. It will take a long time, and we can move this time on the sidelines into the hallways. And thank you very much again for your presentation. Let's thank